It is my honor today. Most of the people in this room, I believe, have taken classes or at least read some of Ernest Holmes' work. And I want you to close your eyes right now, and I want you to picture Dr. Ernest Holmes. Just picture him in your mind, see him, and say to yourself, I believe, I believe, I believe, and just maybe we'll manifest him. What do you think? Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ernest Holmes.
Wonderful manifestation. You people are great. Wow. I can't believe I'm here. Thank you, dear.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. You okay?
129 years old, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Whoa, you okay?
Yep, I'm fine. Just a little hiccup.
There is a power for good in the universe, greater than we are, and you can use it. As she said, I am Ernest Holmes, and I am very, very happy to be here this morning. Thank you. Thank you so much. Many years ago, you are really wonderful people. Do you know that? Were you aware of that? When I came up, I felt the love here. I truly felt it. How many of you have seen me before? How many of you have seen me at Asilomar? You know, I came back to Asilomar about 10 years ago. I made my transition in 1960, so the last year I was at Asilomar was 1959, and many, many things have happened since then. But when I came back, it was 27 or something, and somebody said, Ernest, why did you come back? Even Jesus didn't come back. And I said, I never left. And you know what? There was a woman who stood up and she left the room, and she had tears in her eyes. But there is no reason for that. There is a reason for her, but not for us. Because I want you to know that I did never leave. And I said back in those days that there will be generations that come in the future. You are those generations. I said these people will not be better or worse, but they will be different, and they will know more than we do. And was that not the truth? I said that in 1959, and look at you. You see, you are religious science, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But the title of my talk today is How I See the World Today and What I Would Do About It. Now, it's very interesting. You know, there's a story that I used to tell about a little boy. And a little boy was sitting there at his little table and his little desk, and he was drawing a picture. I don't know if he was left-handed or right-handed, but he was drawing a picture, and his father came by, knowingly looked upon his little son and said, "What are you drawing, son?" And the son said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the father said, "Well, son, no one knows what God looks like." And the little boy said, "They will when I get through with this picture." And I used to tell that story, and there's a very good reason. How do you see God? If you were to draw God, how would you draw him? You know, everything around us is God. What would you choose to draw? I'm going to talk about how we get these ideas in our mind. We're going to be talking about that in a moment, but I want you to know this. This is how I see the world today. It is different, and everyone knows more than we did back then. You know, I was born in 1887. When I was first born, we didn't even have microphones. Boy, did you have to have a voice back then if you were going to do what I'm doing, but you don't need to now. So there are many things that have changed, and people tell me or talk to each other and say, this world is terrible. This world is getting worse every single day. It's worse. There are horrible things happening. Well, I want to tell you that there were always horrible things happening. But we have, instead of waiting home in those days that I did for the evening newspaper to find out what happened, we find out instantaneously now. And we find out constantly all the time, and we get the idea that there are worse things happening now, and the world is going to, forgive the word, hell in a handbasket. No, it's not. You see, I believe that the principles of science of mind are more prevalent now than they ever were. They are so integrated into us. I'm going to tell you a story, and I want you to know this is a story. You had a very famous man died. He made his transition, didn't die at all. That's what I've got to tell you. But, and that is, are you familiar with a man named Dr. Wayne Dyer? Okay, good. Because this is very important. I spoke to him the other day. You see, he was up here, and we were, actually, this may sound kind of strange to you, but we were playing baseball. You see, we have baseball up there. I don't know if you knew that. And we are on the same team, Wayne Dyer and I. And I don't know who we were playing. I think it was the Cardinals. It was a Catholic team, I know. But anyway, so he was talking to me, and he said, you know, Ernest, and I said, what, Wayne? He said, we were in the dugout waiting to go up, and he said, you know what? He said, I took your foundations class. And I said, no, I did not know that. He said, yes, I did. And he said, do you know who was in that class? And I said, no, I don't know that. He said, Jack Canfield was in that same foundations class. And I said, I didn't know that either. He said, you know who Jack Canfield is? And I said, he's responsible for some books. He said, yeah, the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, yes. And he said, you know who else was in that same class? I said, no, I do not. He said, Anthony Robbins was in the same class. Now, I checked this later, and I found out that he was telling the truth. Did you know that those three people were in the foundations class many, many, many years ago? They went on to be some great things in their own personalities, in their own ways of being. We're all part of the same mind, but they chose their way, and they became something. Science of mind is now integrated into many different aspects without our name, and that's fine with me. I don't care. If that idea comes across, our idea of what religious science is, that is absolutely wonderful. That is what we would love to see. Now, what about the law of attraction? Well, the law of attraction is now a household word. And why? Because of The Secret. Who knows The Secret? How many people have heard of The Secret? Well, there used to be an old song, it's no secret anymore. But what is the secret? We were talking about the secret 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. I was talking about it. And now it's out. And this is religious science. This is the things that we proposed, and they are out there now, and the world is better for it. And that's what I feel now. I feel that it is very hopeful the way the world is now. Do you feel that way? Well, we are going to find out what that means and why you feel the way you do. How I see the world today, that's part of how I see the world today. And what can you do about it? We are going to talk about that also. Now, we talked about the law of attraction, but what I really want to get at today, and this is very important, what I would like to get at is for you to be for something and against nothing. And what does that mean? What does that mean? We perhaps have heard the phrase before, but I'm going to delve into it right now. It means that if you are for something, then that's what you are for. But each one of us in our own minds has something that we are against. Now, it used to be that religion was on one side and science was on the other side. And religion was for their religion. There's thousands of them, but they were for religion, but they were against science because science were heathens. Science was people that wrote things down and did formulas and did things, but had nothing to do with God, so they were against him. So what does this mean? Well, it means that we have scientists over here, and they are against religion because religion is a bunch of crazy people making up stories. You see, and that's just the way that it is in their minds. But what would happen if you had a group that came along called religious science? Well, that blows everything apart, of course, just the name itself. It sounds kind of funny. How could you do this? Let's take a look at what if religion was for religion and against nothing, not against science. Well, they would have more energy to put into their religion, you see, because they wouldn't have the antagonistic energy going over here, which takes away from the energy that they have for their good, before something and against nothing. And what about the scientists themselves? The scientists who are so concerned about the fact that religion is off doing something that means nothing, that you can't prove or anything else. But what if they just said, we're just going to do science and let religion do what they're going to do? Well, what happens after a while is that we come to the conclusion that science is now sitting there with their microscopes and all of their equipment that they have, and they see things more and more, and then they don't see things that they know are there because other things are there and they know them, and pretty soon it gets down to bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you're looking, and what do you have? You have nothing. There is space. So what does this mean? Ultimately, the scientists have to admit that if there is nothing really, when you go through everything, then what is there? There can only be intelligence. You see? There can only be that space, that mind. There has to be that one mind that is there ultimately. Scientists don't know a whole bunch. They don't. Some will admit, no, we don't know what this, we don't know why, they don't know why gravity happens. They don't know, there's a whole bunch of things they don't know. They've been fooling us all of these years, of course. But they don't know. But what if that comes to that? And now we come over here to religion. And what if religion proves that the unseen is just as powerful as the seen, is just as real as the seen, and we can prove it? Because we prove it through our demonstrations. We prove it through the fact that we can think of something and then it comes about. But why do we have, where does thought come from? Let's look at it that way. I had a talk I was going to give you, and I'm just off on something else now. But anyway, I could just, thank you. Your people are really quite wonderful. So where does our thought come from? Sometimes we will say, well, if you have a disease or you have a bad relationship or you don't have any money, that's your fault. That's your fault. You know why it's your fault? Very simple. It's your fault because that's what you were thinking. Now that's what you got. Well, let's take a look a little deeper into that idea, because I do not believe that. I do not think that you are to blame for anything. You see, when you were born into this world, you have a cosmic urge to do something. You feel that. You feel that all the time. That's the reason that you want to do something. You want to do this. You want to do that. But you have all of these things. Why is this happening? I don't want this. I don't want I don't want poverty. I don't want. You see, when you were born because we are one mind. You were born with millions and millions of ideas from those people that came before you. Now, this is a proven scientific fact. It is. And Carl Jung, wonderful, wonderful man, and he called it the collective unconscious, and it's really there. So you may have a whole bunch of things inside of you that you don't know how they got there, do you? No, she says. I don't know how they got there. Well, that's how they got there, because we perhaps were born with those. Not perhaps, we were. Science has now proven that each one of you has at least 2 or 3 genes from Julius Caesar. Oh my heavens. Et tu, Brute? Is that why you go around saying that sometimes? You don't know why, but that's the reason. That's the reason. That you go through these ideas and that you have them. And also the way you were raised. Perhaps you were raised with somebody. Maybe you had wonderful parents. Maybe you had some not so wonderful parents. And maybe you learned things that were not correct from these parents. Maybe some of you were raised by wolves. I don't know. I don't see anybody here. I can usually spot them if they were. But you were raised and you had some other ideas that got into your mind. How do we get rid of those? You have to be for something and against nothing. So how does all this fit together? Very simply. You can only approach the unconscious by the conscious. You must use your conscious mind to go inward and change those things that you do not want, and accept into your life those things that you do want. And you can only receive at the level of your acceptance. So if you can accept a bountiful amount, then that's what you were able to get. If you cannot, then you can't. And if you spend more time against those things that you do not want, that is energy taken away from those things that you do want. Is that clear to you? It's very important, because a lot of people do not talk about this particular thing, and it's a very, very simple, utmost simplicity, as I sometimes say, of what it is that is going on with us and what it is that we can do about it. And if we do about it, then so we can do about the world. And that's what I believe. Now you go to a practitioner. How many people have been to a practitioner? Get thee to a practitioner. I think that's very important too. And the reason is you go into a practitioner, and not every time, but this is somewhat of what happens. So the practitioner said, how are you? What seems to be the things that are on your mind today? And then you would tell the practitioner, well, I have this going on and this happening and this is terrible. You're not going to the practitioner to tell him how great everything is and then pay the money. No. You can take them out to lunch if you want to do that. But to go to a session, you tell them everything that's wrong. And then the practitioner says, it's been about 30 minutes while you've been telling them all the things wrong with you, of course. And then the practitioner very wisely says, is there anything else? And then you go on for another 15 minutes. And then the practitioner says, is that it? And you say yes. And the practitioner says, okay, let's go upstairs. Now, when the practitioner says go upstairs, he means go inward. Okay? And the practitioner gives a treatment. And in that prayer treatment, the practitioner takes on the idea that this person is perfect in the way that they are. But the practitioner says that we are one with God. There is only one God, and we are one with that, and you and I are. And I speak my word for a certain thing. I'll speak my word that you come to a conclusion with your relationships. I come speak about your assets, your money, whatever, your health, whatever. I speak my word that these things are perfect in your life, and those things that you want, we will speak in affirmative to that also. But the practitioner never says, we are going to get rid of this person, or we are going to get the person that did this to you and lost all your money. Because, you see, that's against something. The practitioner is only for something. So when you get through with your practitioner session, the practitioner may say to you, we give thanks, and it's already been acted upon. And that's because it has been acted upon in mind. And if it's done in mind, then it has already come about. Perhaps it hasn't manifested in front of us right this moment, but it has already come about. And then we give thanks, and then we release it. And that's the way it works, and that's for something and against nothing. So, how do we get to, and what I would do about it? You start where you are now. Don't go anywhere. Start where you are. Can you do that? Do you know where you are now? Here's the Simi Valley. Beautiful congregation, that's where you are. You are with people who know, enjoy, and love you. You're in your right place, but you start where you are now. When I was in 1915, you remember when that was? No, some of you weren't alive, but I was. I came to Southern California, to Venice, to be with my brother Fenwick, and he had a church. There was a congregational church, and I worked with the youth. But I was so into what it is I was doing, because I'd read Emerson, and I had studied Mary Baker Eddy, and I opened a shop. A philosophy shop. I opened it, got some furniture and storefront. 3 months I was there, and nobody came in except for one person. And he was insane. It was. He was insane. So I closed that. Now, why did I have to close that? Because I wasn't starting where I was. I started someplace else. I got a job. I got a job as the purchasing agent for the city of Venice. And there wasn't too many things to buy back then for Venice, so I had a lot of extra time. And my boss one day came in and he saw that I had all of these books there, and he said, "What are these books, Ernest?" I said, "Well, there's a book on it." And he said, "Do you mind if I take one?" He took it home and he read it, and he came back. He said, "Would you come and speak to a group of us?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And they actually took a collection and paid me 25 cents. Well, it was worth a lot more then, but it wasn't worth that much. That is how a career began. But I started where I was. I had to get a job, so I got a job. And then opportunities came in, you see. So how do we do this? Well, sometimes I sit for hours thinking on one thought and perhaps a word or an idea, and I'll sit for hours and think about this. It's not a waste of time. I want you to know that. It's not a waste of time. Because I want to know for myself what this idea means to me, to the people around me, to anybody, anywhere. And I sit there until I know that. That is not a waste of time. That is where you begin. And what would I do about it? I would start where I am now. And I would do that. And if you do that, I believe that this is where we start to change the world for better. Indeed, it can't be done any other way. It can't be done any other way. Yet we look out here, or we are definitely, I'm sure there are people here, not you of course, but there are certain people who came in here with an idea against something. You may have been against the traffic. You may have been against your boss. You may have been, I don't know what you were against, but you definitely were against something. And you know the minute you remove that idea from your mind to be against anything, it will disappear. Now, it will disappear in your mind and in your experience. But for it to happen in the world, we have to have more and more people for something and against nothing. Is that understandable? I am very glad that it is, because if you learn nothing else this morning, I believe that that is something. And you can use that when you go to sit and think on something. Think on that phrase and find out what it means to you. I'm going to finish today with something that, well, I think it's very important for you to know. And it's something that I said many, many years ago. But I'm going to repeat it now, and then I'm going to sit down. You see, you are religious science. I am not. Sometimes you think I am, but I'm not. I don't even take myself seriously, which you can tell by my jokes, but I don't even take jokes seriously. I take what I am doing seriously. You see, you are religious science, our ministers, our practitioners, our laymen, everyone involved in this. You find me 1,000 people in the world who know what religious science is and use it and live it as it is, and I myself shall be able to see a new world, a new heaven, and a new earth right here. It's that simple. It's very, isn't it? Utmost simplicity. There is a cosmic power wrapped up in a cosmic consciousness and purposeness that is equal to the vision which looses it. Looses it. What I am saying is this: there is a law that backs up the vision, and the law is immutable. Any practitioner will tell you that. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. Who said that? That's correct, Jesus. There is a power transcendent beyond our needs, our little wants. Demonstrating a dollar is good if one needs it, or demonstrating a healing, a hurt if one has it, is certainly important. But beyond that, at the real feast of the tabernacle of the Almighty, in the temple of the living God, in the banquet hall of heaven, there is something beyond anything that you and I have touched. You find me 1,000 people who know that and use it, and the world will no longer be famished. How important it is that each one of us in our simple way shall live from God to God, with God, in God, and to each other. That is why we're here this morning in Simi Valley. I love this place. And that is why we are taking out of this room with us a trust, I trust, a vision, and an inspiration in something beyond a hope and a longing that the living Spirit shall through us walk anew into its own creation, and a new glory shall come with a new dawn. Let's close our eyes for a moment. Now the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silent before him as we drink deep from the perennial fountain of eternal life, as we partake of the bread of heaven, and as we open wide the gates of our consciousness that the King of glory shall come in. And may God bless and keep us, and for all the love that you have given me here this morning. May I bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. That's terrific. You're terrific.